The stars had always called to humanity. For 200 years, they had answered that call. They built ships. They crossed the void. They made new homes on distant worlds. By the year 2187, humans lived in 3 star systems. They were proud of what they had built. They had no idea what was coming. Admiral Danny Vance stood on the bridge of the Times Resolute Dawn *, the largest carrier in Earth's fleet. He was 62 years old with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much war. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hartwell, his tactical officer, watched the sensor displays with sharp attention. She was young, barely 30, but Vance trusted her mind more than anyone else in the fleet. "Admiral," she said, her voice tight. "We have contact." Multiple signatures dropping out of faster-than-light travel. "I count 47 ships." Vance moved to her station. On the screen, he saw shapes unlike anything humanity had ever built. The ships were massive, covered in strange symbols that glowed with soft purple light. Each one was at least 3 times the size of the Times Resolute Dawn *. "Send a greeting on all frequencies," Vance ordered. "Standard first contact protocol." Dr. Marcus Cole rushed onto the bridge. He was the ship's xenobiologist, a man who had spent his entire life dreaming of this moment. His hands were shaking as he took his place beside the Admiral. "This is it," Cole whispered. "First contact. Actual aliens." The response came quickly. A face appeared on the main screen. The alien was tall and slender, with skin like polished silver, and eyes that burned with cold fire. When it spoke, the translator took a moment to catch up. "I am Ambassador Zeth Coral of the Verithan Dominion. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have conquered 47 species. We have brought order to chaos. You are the 48th. Vance felt his stomach tighten. This was not the first contact anyone had hoped for. "I am Admiral Danny Vance of the United Earth Space Command. We come in peace. We seek friendship and trade with all species." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "You misunderstand. We do not seek friendship. We do not trade. We rule. Your species will surrender unconditionally. You will become a servitor race under our protection. This is not a request." Dr. Cole stepped forward. "Ambassador, perhaps we can discuss this. Our species values cooperation." "You offer nothing," Zeth Coral interrupted. "You are small. You are weak. You live for less than a century. You have existed in space for barely 200 years. We have existed for 1,000,000. Your technology is primitive. Your military is laughable. You will submit, or you will be destroyed." Vance's jaw tightened. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago. He had seen friends die in the cold vacuum of space. He was not a man who frightened easily. "With respect, Ambassador," Vance said slowly, "humanity does not surrender. We would be happy to discuss terms of peace, mutual respect, and cooperation. But we will not become servants to anyone." Zeth Coral stared at him for a long moment. "You do not understand your situation. Allow me to demonstrate." The screen went dark. Lisa Hartwell looked up from her console, her face pale. "Admiral, the alien fleet is moving. They're heading toward New Geneva." New Geneva was humanity's largest colony. Over 2 million people lived there. Families, children, people who had left Earth to build a better future. "Set an intercept course," Vance ordered. "Maximum speed." But it was already too late. The Verithan fleet reached New Geneva in hours. The Times, Resolute Dawn Times, arrived just in time to watch from a distance. Vance stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the railing, as the alien ships positioned themselves above the colony. "Admiral," Hartwell said, her voice breaking. "They're charging weapons." "Hail them," Vance commanded. "Tell them we'll talk. Tell them anything." The communication channels remained silent. The Verithans were done talking. The first beam of light struck the capital city. Then another. Then another. In less than 10 minutes, New Geneva was burning. The atmosphere itself caught fire. The oceans boiled. 2.3 million human beings died while Admiral Danny Vance watched, helpless, unable to do anything but bear witness. When it was over, Zeth Coral's face reappeared on the screen. You have 30 days to submit. Use this time wisely. Consider what you have seen today. Consider what will happen to your other worlds, to your home world. There is no shame in accepting reality. You are an inferior species. Accept your place in the natural order of the galaxy. The transmission ended. The Verithan fleet turned and vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind a dead world and a broken admiral. Vance did not move for a long time. His crew watched him in silence. They were waiting for orders. They were waiting for hope. They were waiting for someone to tell them what to do next. Finally, Vance spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire bridge. They think we're weak because we're small. They think we're afraid because we're young. They think we'll surrender because we've never faced anything like them before. He turned to face his crew. His eyes were dry, but something burned behind them, something cold and determined and utterly without mercy. They're wrong. They just made the worst mistake any species has ever made in the history of this galaxy. They made us angry. Enwer. He looked at Hartwell. Set a course for Earth. Maximum speed. Send a message to command. Tell them what happened. Tell them to prepare. He paused. Tell them war is coming. As the Time's resolute dawn times turned toward home, Sergeant Kyle Bishop stood in the ship's marine quarters. He had watched the destruction of New Geneva on the monitors with his squad. Some of them were crying. Some were praying. Bishop just sat in silence, cleaning his rifle. His corporal, a young woman named Amy Tran, looked at him. Sarge? What do we do? Bishop clicked the rifle's magazine into place. He looked at her with eyes that had gone cold. We make them pay, he said simply. Every single one of them. We make them pay. Across the ship, across the fleet, across every human colony in the galaxy, the same feeling spread. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was something far more dangerous. It was the quiet, patient anger of a species that had just learned it was not alone in the universe, and that the universe had made a terrible enemy. The Verithans believed they had sent a message of power. They had no idea what they had awakened. The news of New Geneva spread across human space like wildfire. Every screen on every world showed the same footage. A beautiful green planet turned to ash in minutes. 2 million voices silenced forever. Families watched in horror. Children asked their parents questions that no one could answer. For one terrible day, humanity felt something it had not felt in centuries. True fear. But fear did not last long. Something else took its place. President Megan Torres stood in the command center beneath Luna's surface. She was 54 years old, a former combat pilot who had never expected to lead humanity through anything like this. Around her, generals and admirals argued about what to do. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to fight. No one had a real plan. Torres slammed her hand on the table. The room went silent. Enough, she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. We are not going to surrender. We are not going to beg. We are going to fight. The only question is how. General Nathan Cross stepped forward. He was the head of Earth's defense forces. A tall man with a scarred face and a brilliant tactical mind. Ma'am, we've been analyzing everything we know about the Verithans. Their ships are bigger. Their weapons are stronger. Their shields are more advanced. In a straight fight, they would destroy us. Then we don't fight straight, Torres said. Tell me something useful, General. Cross smiled grimly. There is something. According to the data we've gathered from their transmissions, the Verithans haven't fought a real war in 3,000 years. Every species they've conquered has either surrendered immediately or been wiped out in days. They don't know what a long war looks like. They've never faced an enemy that fights back. Dr. Samantha Reed, the head of weapons research, raised her hand. She was a small woman with messy hair and dark circles under her eyes. She had not slept since New Geneva. "I have something," she said. "We've been working on experimental weapons. Things we thought were too dangerous to test. One of them is called the collapse drive. It creates a temporary gravitational field so strong that it crushes everything within a certain radius. Ships, stations, anything." "How destructive?" Cross asked. "One missile could destroy 40 ships if they're close together." The room went quiet. Torres nodded slowly. "How soon can you have them ready?" 2 weeks. Maybe less if I don't sleep." "Don't sleep," Torres said. "General Cross, I want a war plan on my desk by morning. We're not going to wait for them to come back. We're going to hit them first." Admiral Vance arrived at Luna Command the next day. He walked into the war room looking 10 years older than he had a week ago. But his voice was steady when he spoke. "We've intercepted Verathon communications," he said. "We know where one of their supply depots is. A station called Catherine. It feeds their ships in this sector. If we destroy it, we slow them down." "How many ships do they have there?" Cross asked. 60 warships. Maybe more. "And how many can we send?" Vance paused. 12. The generals exchanged looks. 12 against 60 was suicide. But Torres shook her head. "We don't need to win. We need to hurt them. We need to show them that we're not going to roll over and die." "What do you need?" "Admiral." Vance looked at the map of the galaxy. "Volunteers. Ships with crews who understand they might not come home. And every weapon Dr. Reed can give us." 3 days later, the strike force launched. 12 ships against an empire that had never lost a battle. Captain Ben Lawson commanded the Times Iron Compass Asterisk, the fleet's newest prototype warship. He was 38 years old and had never been in real combat before. None of them had. Not against something like this. The journey to Catherine Station took 6 days. When they arrived, Vance gathered the captains on a video call. "Listen carefully," he said. "We cannot beat them ship to ship, so we're not going to try. We've loaded half our ships with automated drones packed with explosives. The other half will carry the new collapse missiles. We're going to hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they know what's happening." "And if we can't get out?" Captain Lawson asked. Vance's face was hard. "Then we make sure our deaths mean something." The Battle of Catherine Station began at 0300 hours, ship time. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in the middle of the Verathon formation. Before the enemy could react, Vance gave the order. "Launch everything." Suicide drones screamed toward the station. Collapse missiles tore through space. The Verathons scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. They had never faced an enemy that attacked without warning. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything. The station exploded in a blinding flash. 23 Verathon ships were destroyed in the first minute. The human fleet scattered, each ship running in a different direction. The Verathons gave chase. They were faster, stronger, better armed. One by one, the human ships were caught and destroyed. The Times Starfall Asterisk. The Times New Horizon Asterisk. The Times Liberty's Edge Asterisk. 8 ships lost. Thousands of lives. But the Times Iron Compass Times escaped. And so did the Times Resolute Dawn Asterisk. And so did 2 others. 4 ships returned to Earth. Behind them, they left a destroyed station, 23 enemy warships, and a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity was not going to surrender. President Torres addressed the survivors that night. Her broadcast reached every human world, every ship, every station. "They believe we are lambs awaiting slaughter," she said. They believe we will kneel because we are small and young and afraid. They are wrong. We have shown them today what wolves look like. And this is only the beginning. 2 Mark. Far across the galaxy, High Sovereign Maltheus of the Verithan Dominion received the news of Kethrin Station. He sat on his throne for a long time, saying nothing. His advisors waited in nervous silence. Finally, he spoke. Send the Grand Armada. Every ship we have. Burn their worlds. Kill their children. Erase them from history. He paused, his ancient eyes burning with something that might have been the first flicker of doubt. Show them what happens to species that dare to resist. The war had truly begun. And neither side would ever be the same. The Grand Armada of the Verithan Dominion was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. 2,000 warships. Each one capable of destroying a planet. They moved through space like a wall of death. Unstoppable and absolute. High Sovereign Maltheus had commanded them to erase humanity from existence. Against this force, humanity had 200 ships. Admiral Vance stood in the war room on Luna, studying the holographic map of the galaxy. The Verithan fleet was 3 weeks away. Every calculation, every simulation, every strategy ended the same way. Humanity would lose a direct battle. It wasn't even close. We can't fight them head-on, he said to his officers. So we won't. Commander Derek Shaw leaned forward. He was a thin man with cold eyes and a reputation for doing the impossible. His specialty was stealth operations. We go after their support lines, Shaw said. Supply ships, communication relays, scout patrols. We make them bleed slowly. Vance nodded. I'm giving you 12 of our fastest ships. You'll operate independently. Hit them where they don't expect. Then disappear before they can respond. Shaw smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I'll need volunteers who understand they're not coming home for a long time. You'll have them. Shaw's fleet, nicknamed the Ghost Pack, launched within the week. For the next 3 months, they haunted the edges of Verithan space. They struck without warning and vanished like smoke. Supply convoys disappeared. Communication stations went silent. Patrol ships were found drifting dead in space. Their crews killed by boarding parties who left no survivors. The Verithans had no idea how to respond. They had never faced guerrilla warfare before. Every time they sent ships to hunt the Ghost Pack, Shaw was already gone. And while they chased shadows, the Grand Armada slowed down. Ships ran low on supplies. Crews grew nervous. Meanwhile, on the ground, humanity was fighting a different kind of war. Corporal Amy Tran led her squad through the frozen tunnels of a Verithan base on the moon of Kethros VII. They had landed in secret 2 days ago, hiding in the ice until the moment was right. Their target was the command center, where 3 high-ranking Verithan admirals were meeting to plan the assault on Earth. Tran was 26 years old. Before the war, she had been a farmer's daughter from Kansas. Now, she was one of the most deadly soldiers humanity had ever produced. Stay quiet, she whispered into her radio. We go in fast. We kill the targets. We get out. The squad moved like ghosts. They had trained for months for missions like this. Close combat. Silent kills. In and out before anyone knew they were there. The first guard never saw Tran's blade. Neither did the second. Her squad swept through the hallways, leaving bodies behind them. By the time they reached the command center, the Verithans inside had no idea death was coming. Tran kicked open the door. 3 admirals looked up in surprise. They were tall, powerful beings who had ruled the stars for millennia. They had never imagined that something as small and weak as a human could threaten them. They were wrong. 30 seconds later, it was over. Tran's helmet camera recorded everything. The footage was broadcast across the galaxy within hours. For the first time, other species saw humans fighting back, and something strange began to happen. The Kelnorians, a species that had lived under Verithan rule for 2,000 years, watched the footage in secret gatherings. The Veth, who had been conquered before humans even discovered fire, shared it on hidden networks. The Scythony, who had nearly been destroyed in the last Verithan expansion, whispered about the small, fragile creatures who dared to resist. Hope spread through the galaxy like a disease the Verithans could not cure. But the Grand Armada kept coming, and eventually, it reached Sol. The Battle of Sol began on a cold morning in January. 800 Verithan ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. They outnumbered the human defenders 8-1. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge of the Times, resolute dawn asterisk, watching the enemy approach. Behind him, every ship humanity could gather formed a desperate line of defense. Mars, Luna, Earth itself, everything they had ever built stood behind them. All ships, Vance said calmly. This is it. Everything we are, everything we've done, comes down to today. Fight for your families. Fight for your homes. Fight because surrender is not who we are. The Verithans attacked with overwhelming force. Their weapons tore through the human lines. Ships exploded. Thousands died in the first minutes. Luna's defense platforms were destroyed. Mars's orbital stations fell one by one. But humanity did not break. Captain Ben Lawson's Times Iron Compass Times pushed through the chaos, carrying humanity's most powerful weapon. The collapse drive missiles, perfected by Dr. Reed's team, were ready. Target the center of their formation, Lawson ordered. Fire everything we have. The missiles launched. Space itself seemed to bend and twist as the gravitational weapons hit their targets. 40 Verithan ships collapsed into themselves, crushed by forces they had never imagined possible. The explosion tore a hole in the enemy line. The battle raged for 18 hours. The Verithans lost 160 ships. Humanity lost over 100. Luna's surface was scarred by orbital bombardment. Millions of people huddled in shelters, listening to the distant thunder of war. But when the smoke cleared, Earth was still there, and the Verithan fleet, for the first time in 3,000 years, ordered a retreat. Admiral Vance watched them go. He was exhausted. He had lost friends, ships, everything, but he was still standing. Sergeant Bishop found him on the observation deck later that night, staring at the stars. "They'll be back," Bishop said. Vance nodded. "What do we do?" The old admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but certain. "We take the fight to them. We show the galaxy that the Dominion can be beaten. We give hope to everyone who's ever lived under their rule." He turned to face Bishop. "And we don't stop until this is over." Somewhere in the darkness of space, other species were watching. And for the first time, in millennia, they began to believe that freedom might actually be possible. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sol. The war had changed everything. The Verithan Dominion had lost 400 ships, more than they had lost in the previous 3,000 years combined. Humanity had lost colonies, millions of lives, and nearly everything they had built beyond Earth. But they had not lost the one thing that mattered most. They had not lost hope. Admiral Vance stood in a secret meeting room on Luna, facing a holographic projection of a being he had never expected to see. Ambassador Lyran of the Kelnorian people was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and eyes that held centuries of suffering. "We have watched your war with great interest," Lyran said, her voice careful. "For 2,000 years, my people have lived under Verithan rule. We have dreamed of freedom, but never believed it was possible. And now?" Vance asked. "Now we see your ships burning through the darkness. We see your soldiers striking at the heart of the Dominion. We see a species that refuses to kneel." She paused. "We are not the only ones watching. The Veth, the Sithani, the Drokar, all the conquered peoples of the galaxy are waiting." "Waiting for what?" Lyran's eyes met his. "Proof. Proof that the Verithans can truly be defeated. Not just slowed. Not just bloodied. Truly broken." Vance understood. A battle won here or there was not enough. The subjugated species needed to see the impossible. They needed to see the Verathan, heart pierced. Verathis Prime, he said quietly. Lyran nodded. Strike their homeworld. Show the galaxy that no one is safe from justice. Do this, and you will not fight alone. After Lyran's image faded, Vance called an emergency meeting with President Torres and the senior command staff. Dr. Samantha Reed was there, looking exhausted but determined. She had spent 6 months perfecting the collapse drive technology, pushing herself beyond all limits. It's suicide, General Cross said flatly. Verathis Prime is the most defended planet in the galaxy. Orbital platforms, defense fleets, ground-based weapons that can destroy ships in orbit. We'd be doing exactly what they never expect, Vance replied. The Verathans have spent 10,000 years conquering others. No one has ever attacked them. Not once. Their defenses are built to keep conquered peoples down, not to repel a real invasion. President Torres listened in silence. When everyone had spoken, she turned to Dr. Reed. Sam, can we do this? Reed pulled up a holographic map. I've been working on something called Project Hammer. Concentrated collapse drive missiles that can punch through orbital defenses, combined with a surprise attack through uncharted space routes. She took a breath. It's possible. Barely. Back. Torres looked around the room. How many ships can we send? 150, Cross said. Everything we can spare, without leaving Earth defenseless. Then do it. Torres stood up, her voice hard. Admiral Vance, you'll lead the assault personally. I want the galaxy to see our flag flying over the ruins of their throne. The fleet launched 3 weeks later. Ambassador Lyran had provided secret routes through regions of space the Verathans had abandoned long ago. The journey took 2 months. The ships running silent, hiding from patrols, crawling through the darkness toward the heart of an empire. Admiral Vance barely slept during the voyage. He spent his nights studying maps, reviewing plans, and talking with his crew. But no one asked to leave. No one complained. They understood what was at stake. When the fleet finally reached the Verathis system, Vance gathered his commanders for a final briefing. The first wave will hit the orbital platforms with collapse missiles, he said. The second wave will provide cover for ground transports. We're not here to conquer. We're here to send a message. We hit the citadel of eternity, the symbolic heart of the Dominion. We plant our flag. We broadcast it to the galaxy. Then we get out. Sergeant Bishop, who would lead the ground assault, nodded grimly. And if the Verathans try to stop us? Vance smiled without humor. Make them regret it. The assault began at dawn, Verathis Prime local time. 150 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the planet. The Verathan defenders had no warning. For the first time in their history, enemy weapons fell on their sacred world. The collapse missiles tore through the orbital platforms like knives through paper. Explosions lit up the sky. Human fighters screamed down through the atmosphere, clearing a path for the landing craft. Sergeant Bishop's transport hit the ground hard. He was the first one out, his rifle already firing. Around him, 500 Marines stormed toward the citadel. A massive fortress that had stood for 10,000 years. The fighting was brutal. Verathan soldiers were bigger, stronger, and better armed, but they had never faced humans in close combat. They had never seen the desperate fury of beings fighting for their very existence. Bishop led his squad through the outer walls, then the inner courtyard, then the great hall itself. Bodies fell around him. Friends he had known for years died within arm's reach. But he kept moving, kept fighting, kept pushing forward. At the heart of the citadel, they found the throne room. And there, trying to escape through a hidden passage, was High Sovereign Maltheus himself. The ancient ruler turned to face the humans. His eyes burned with hatred and disbelief. "You are insects," he spat. "You are nothing. This changes nothing." Bishop walked forward, his weapon raised. "This changes everything." Outside, Corporal Tran climbed to the highest tower of the citadel. In her hands, she carried a simple flag, sewn by hand on Earth before the mission. With the planet burning around her and Verithan ships desperately trying to reach the surface, she planted the flag and turned to face the camera drone that had followed her up. Her voice was steady as she spoke the words that would echo across the galaxy. To every species that has lived in chains, to every world that has known only fear, look at this moment. Look at what we have done. They told us we were weak. They told us we were nothing. They were wrong. And if we can stand here, so can you. Sin says 5-1, and I 1-1. The broadcast spread faster than light itself. In every corner of the Dominion, enslaved peoples watched in amazement. And then, they began to rise. The Kelnorians seized their home system, overwhelming the small Verithan garrison. The Sithani disabled the orbital platforms above their world. The Veth and the Drokar and a dozen other species took up weapons they had hidden for centuries. The Dominion, the great empire that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, began to fall apart. And at the center of it all, a simple flag flew over the ruins of a throne. Humanity had kept its promise. 1 year had passed since the first Verithan ship appeared above New Geneva. 1 year of blood and fire and sacrifice. 1 year since humanity learned it was not alone in the universe, and that the universe wanted them dead. Now, above the burned world of Verithis Prime, the final battle of the war was about to begin. Admiral Danny Vance stood on the bridge of the Times Resolute Dawn Asterisk, watching the enemy fleet gather. 600 Verithan warships, the last real military force the Dominion had left. Behind him, 400 human vessels held formation. And beside them, for the first time in history, flew the ships of free peoples. 300 vessels from the Kelnorians, the Sithani, the Veth, and a dozen other species who had risen against their masters. 700 ships against 600. The odds had finally turned. High Sovereign Maltheus broadcast one final message from his command ship. His ancient face was twisted with rage and something that might have been fear. "You think you have won," he said. "You are wrong. The Dominion will never fall. We will crush you, as we have crushed every species that dared to defy us. Your rebellion ends today." Admiral Vance responded on the same frequency. His voice was calm and tired. The voice of a man who had seen too much death. "High Sovereign, this is your last chance. Surrender now. Order your fleet to stand down. End this war before more of your people die." Maltheus laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Surrender? To you? To these primitives and traitors? Never. We would rather die than bow to insects." Vance nodded slowly. "So be it." The battle began with a wave of collapse missiles that tore through the Verithan forward line. Ships exploded in cascades of light. The Allied fleet surged forward, human vessels flying side by side with alien allies who had been enemies just months before. Captain Lawson's Times Iron Compass Times led the charge. His ship had survived every major battle of the war, and his crew had become legends. They cut through the enemy formation like a blade, drawing fire away from the lighter Allied vessels. "All ships, concentrate fire on their flagships," Vance ordered. "Take out their command structure." The Verithan admirals had never faced a coordinated multi-species assault. They had spent millennia fighting alone, conquering isolated civilizations one at a time. They had no experience with an enemy that fought as equals. Commander Shaw's Ghost Pack struck from behind, appearing out of nowhere to destroy supply ships and communication vessels. Without coordination, the Verithan fleet began to fragment. Individual captains made their own decisions, some fighting to the death, others trying to flee. But there was nowhere to flee. The galaxy had risen. Every route home was blocked by ships, from species the Verithans had oppressed for thousands of years. On the surface of Verithis Prime, Sergeant Bishop led the final assault on the High Sovereign's palace. The building was massive, a monument to 10,000 years of conquest. Now it burned. Bishop's squad fought through wave after wave of defenders. Corporal Tran was at his side, her rifle never stopping. They had lost so many friends in this war, so many brothers and sisters who would never go home, but they did not stop. They could not stop. Not until this was finished. They found Malthius in his throne room, surrounded by the last of his personal guard. The ancient ruler stood as they entered, drawing a ceremonial blade that had killed 100 enemies over the centuries. "Come then," he said. The fight was short and brutal. Malthius was old, but he was still deadly. 2 Marines fell before Bishop got close enough, but when it was over, the High Sovereign lay on the floor of his throne room, captured and bound. "Kill me," Malthius said, his voice full of contempt. "That is what conquerors do. That is what we would do." Bishop looked at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No, that's not who we are. You're going to live. You're going to watch your empire fall. You're going to see every species you enslaved walk free. And you're going to answer for what you did." Above the planet, the battle was ending. The Verithan fleet had lost 300 ships. The survivors, realizing they were beaten, refused the High Sovereign's order to fight to the death. One by one, they surrendered. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Dominion had fallen. 3 months later, Admiral Vance stood before the Galactic Coalition, a new alliance of 50 species gathered in the ruins of the Verithan Senate. Humans, Kelnorians, Scythani, Veth, and dozens of others sat together, equals, for the first time in galactic history. President Torres spoke first. "We did not seek this war. We did not want it. But when it came to us, we refused to surrender. Not because we were strong, not because we were brave, but because we believed that all species deserved to be free." Dr. Marcus Cole, now the first human ambassador to the coalition, stepped forward. His voice was soft, but steady. The Verithans believed that might makes right, that the strong should rule and the weak should serve. They were wrong. We stand here today because the galaxy finally united against tyranny. Because hope is stronger than fear. Because even the smallest species can change the course of history. The assembled delegates rose to their feet. For a moment, every voice fell silent. Then, one by one, they began to speak. Each species, in its own language, said the same words. Never again. High Sovereign Malthius was tried for crimes against sentient life. He was not executed. Instead, he was imprisoned on a barren moon, forced to spend the rest of his long life watching the galaxy heal from what his empire had done. Sergeant Bishop returned to Earth. He walked through fields that had not been touched by war, breathing air that still smelled like home. Corporal Tran stood beside him, looking at the same sunset. "What now?" she asked. Bishop smiled. The first real smile he had allowed himself in over a year. "We rebuild, we heal, and we make sure this never happens again." Admiral Vance remained with the fleet. There was still work to do, pirates to chase, borders to establish, peace to keep. But sometimes, late at night, he stood alone on the observation deck and looked at the stars. A young officer found him there one evening. "Admiral, are you all right?" Vance nodded slowly. "I'm thinking about New Geneva, about everyone we lost, about what they sacrificed so we could be here. Do you think it was worth it?" The old admiral was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but certain. "They called us primitive. They called us weak. They said we would bow because we were small and young and fragile." He turned to face the young officer, his eyes bright with something between sorrow and pride. "They underestimated us, and the galaxy will never make that mistake again." Outside the viewport, the stars stretched on forever. Somewhere out there, new civilizations were being born. New challenges waited. New stories were beginning. But one story would be remembered for as long as any species in the galaxy survived. The story of how a small, young, fragile species, stood up against an empire that had ruled for 10,000 years and won, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they refused to give up, because they fought for each other, because they proved that even in the darkest night, hope could survive. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never forget it.